my home lab isn't the prettiest thing in the world, but it does work. Over the years, it's kind of become this conglomeration of different parts and pieces. And as you can see, it's kind of a mess. I mean, I have networking hardware that's on the floor. I have a Proxmox cluster with hard drives hanging out of it. I have a random K3S node. There's just so much going on, and I really do need to do something about it. We're going to start that transformation of the home lab by starting with one really big component. And in today's video, as you already guessed, I'm going to be building a NAS. The reason why I kind of running into a big storage problem. In fact, I've kind of had this problem for years, and I've kind of just kicked the can down the road. And as part of that, I have probably a dozen or so hard drives that are just full of personal media, my YouTube content, and all of my family photos and videos, even important documents that I don't even know I have anymore. Ideally, what I want to get out of having this NAS is it will finally give me one place to sort of have everything. I mean, I have 3 different computers that I primarily use for my normal workflows, and it gets really difficult when you have files in one place and they're never seeming to be on the right computer at the right time. So hopefully having the NAS, while it won't eliminate the need for me to do my own personal organization, it will allow everything to be, again, in a more centralized place and also have way more storage than I can ever have on any of my sort of personal devices. Now, while we are actually going to build a NAS today, I did mention that I kind of just want to generally redo my home lab. And so we're taking another really big step. So we're not just building the NAS, but we're actually going to build all of this into a new mini server rack. And on top of that, we're actually going to go ahead and add some other components that I've been needing and kind of, actually take my home lab from being this little amateur hodgepodge to something a little bit more, I don't want to say professional because that's definitely not what my home lab is, but I definitely do want to get it to a kind of like at the next level. There's just so many things about mine that are just kind of jank, and I want to improve. And I'll go through those a little bit more as we go through the video. But yeah, so that's going to be a reoccurring theme. Just overall general upgrades for the home lab, in addition to the largest addition, which is going to be a NAS, which is brand new for me because I've never actually personally had a NAS. I've always just had hard drives that I've stored things on, but I've never actually ran any sort of NAS on any of my home networks. So it'll be really interesting. I think I'm gonna learn a lot. So yeah, if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you kick back and watch, because this couldn't be very straightforward. There's quite a few turns along the way. All right, so I knew I wanted a NAS, but I had to make the first decision, which is rather I'm gonna actually, buy some sort of pre-built solution or hodgepodge my own together. And in true Shandon fashion, I definitely decided to hodgepodge mine together. The decision was really 2-part. I mean, one, every time I looked at a pre-built solution, there was always some sort of drawback. So in my case, I decided that I was gonna do a complete from scratch build. Another reason why I wanted to go this route is I figured it would actually end up saving me some money. And what I mean by that is I actually have some hardware that was lying around from previous builds and previous upgrades that I've done throughout my home lab throughout the years. Specifically, I had this Ryzen 5 1600. This CPU, I mean, it's nothing crazy by any means, but it's more than enough for a home lab. As a matter of fact, it's kind of overkill for a home lab. And then I also had 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM lying around as well. And actually, this ended up saving me a ton of money because I don't know if you've noticed, but the price of RAM is absolutely kind of bonkers right now. Outside of those 2 components, everything else is basically going to be newly purchased for the build. All right, so in terms of other components, I went ahead and picked up this MSI motherboard. Specifically, this is the X470. Again, it's nothing really special. I purchased it because it was compatible with the CPU that I already had, and it supported onboard graphics. We have a 128 gigabyte NVMe SSD. This is, again, nothing special, but this is just gonna house our actual OS. All right, so for some networking, I ended up picking up this 2.5 gigabit NIC. So that's going to allow me to have faster transfer speeds. I'm going to upgrade the main switch in my Homelab from a 1 gig to 2.5 gig. I picked up this pretty generic 55 watt EVGA power supply. You know, nothing too crazy, just enough to actually power the system. A really cool addition is going to be this server rack mount case. So this is from Rosewell, and it's about a 4U, I believe, case. So it's got plenty of room. It can hold up to 8 drives by default, and then I think you can technically expand it to hold 11. So that'll be more than enough for what I'm planning for this one. And last but not least, for the NAS, you have to have hard drives. So in my case, I ended up, you know, kind of using a lot of those savings that I had on some of the other hardware pieces to purchase these 4 terabyte Seagate drives. The way I'm going to set these up, I'll only end up having about 8 terabytes of capacity in the end. I'll talk more about that later, but I also purchased a new network switch and a patch panel as well as some accessories for the rack and just some other little things for the Homelab. So not really focusing on any components outside of that main NAS, because that kind of is the focus of what we're doing today, and it is definitely the biggest part of the upgrade to this Homelab. After I'd picked everything and everything came in, I was able to just go ahead and get started. I decided to start with something easy. I started by assembling the actual rack itself. The manual did say that it was a 2-person job, but it was 2 a.m. and I was being a little bit impatient and wanted to get this going. So I decided to put it together myself, and I mean, you can see how that how that went. You know, if you want to save, you know, your sanity and your toes, I highly recommend you just follow their suggestion and find a second person to help you with the rack. Especially this one, really great quality. I mean, it was a little pricey. It was really great quality though, and it was pretty substantial. So it's actually really hard to put this together yourself. All right, so with the rack assembled and mostly straight, I decided to go ahead and move on to actually building the NAS itself.
All right, so we're just gonna go and start building the actual board itself. I'm going to install the CPU and the cooler first.
And you know, this went smooth, no problems at all. I mean, you know, I just put the hard drives in backwards and I cut myself when I was trying to get in the back plane by filing down the back part, and you know, I did a horrible job of cable management, but you know, overall pretty smooth, straightforward, and you know, it cut on the first time.
So I have the server hooked up to this test screen, so we're going to see now that everything's plugged up, if everything's good. So we're going to hit the power button, switch the power supply on, and we're going to hit the power button, see if it works. Oh, let's see. Pretty sure the screen's on.
And I'm just kidding. It didn't cut on at all the first time. Turns out that this motherboard, while it does support onboard graphics, it only does for certain CPUs, and the CPU that I have is not one of them.
So I am gonna have to put in a different graphics card.
I just ended up salvaging this EVGA GPU. I had it in another piece of my Homelab. It is way overkill for this. I mean, I just need display out, but that's really all I needed. Once I got it installed though, I was able to cut on the system and it posted for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
So at this point, you know, it was smooth sailing. I mean, the system was booting. I had display out. I installed a TrueNAS onto my external drive, so that way I could go ahead and get it booted and installed on the main OS's drive. And TrueNAS couldn't detect the drive. I tried everything. I checked in the BIOS and I saw that an NVMe drive was actually detected by the BIOS. I even tried installing the latest firmware. I read every single article in their guide. Couldn't figure it out. It just wasn't installing. It just wasn't booting. It just wasn't seeing it by the installer. So I ended up, stumbling upon this random Reddit post, and I think it was probably 3 years old. But someone mentions that some of the MSI boards have this problem where the NVMe slot sometimes isn't detected properly, and they just suggested that you use a different slot. Fortunately, this board does have 2 slots, so I did try another slot. Once I did, I booted up the TrueNAS installer one last time, and surely enough, it detected it. I have no idea why it detected it. Nevertheless, it does work. So if you're having this issue, then just try the other NVMe slot. It's way faster, and it ended up working just fine.
Another thing I learned about this motherboard, after I'd gotten the TrueNAS installed, I had issues where the server would just randomly sort of freeze. Turns out a lot of gaming motherboards and CPUs and whatnot use what are known as C states, which are basically sleep modes that they use to, conserve power, which makes sense. They're power hungry CPUs. Anyway, NASs hate that sort of thing because they don't generally wake from it. So it's actually a bad idea to use a gaming CPU and a gaming motherboard for a NAS. So ideally, save yourself the trouble, get a much simpler board and you won't have this problem. But if you are like me and you're using a gaming motherboard, make sure you go and disable any of the C states or any of the power save features that exist for your motherboard.
So I'm not going to bore you all by making you all watch me as I actually had set up TrueNAS, but it was actually pretty straightforward, and I ended up setting up my drives. I ended up setting them up in a 4-wide VDEV with RAID Z2. So that's a fancy way of saying that ultimately I've halved my capacity. So out of the 16 total terabytes, I only have 8 terabytes of usable storage, but I have 2 redundant drives, right? So I can essentially have 2 drive failures before, I actually lose any sort of data. So that's really cool. And I'm not gonna go into all the details as to RAID Z2 or VDEVs or anything like that. But if you are interested in knowing more about that, and if you're interested in knowing more about TrueNAS in general, I highly recommend you watch Hardware Haven's videos on the subject. If you're really interested and you're thinking about building a NAS yourself, I can't recommend it enough. Like I said, I watched it plenty of times while I was doing my research for this video. So I'll make sure to link it down in the description. All right, so with my OS installed, the system fully together, TrueNAS completely configured, I was able to just move the NAS into the server rack. As you can see, again, that was probably a 2-man job, but made it out. And after getting it into the rack, I added the other little components that I needed, like shelves, my patch panel, switch, etc. And then it was ready. And I mean, look at this. It is absolutely amazing. This rack is amazing to have. Everything has its own place. And as you can see, I have so much space to actually add more things, which is kind of problematic for my wallet because I'm already thinking about the next upgrades. As a matter of fact, I already know what I'm going to do for the next upgrade. But either way, I mean, it just looks absolutely fantastic. And then the NAS itself is performing incredibly well. I've already started backing up, quite a few of my drives. So I'm really excited to continue to do that and get all of the documents and photos and videos and things onto it. But man, it's running incredibly well. The transfer speeds over the LAN are just incredibly fast. So yeah, I'm really impressed with the performance of it so far. I haven't had any qualms. And my only real regret is that I wish I had built my NAS a lot sooner because I'm really enjoying having it. I'm really taking to organizing all my stuff and having it all in one place. And I could have been doing this, for years now. So yeah, I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to see the other things that I end up doing for this Homelab in the upcoming future. Now I know some of you are probably wondering how much all of this costed. So for the NAS itself, with all the hardware I had to purchase and not including anything that I already owned, I ended up spending about $772 for the actual NAS itself. Then on top of that, because of the rack and everything else, the total for the whole Homelab upgrade that you all saw in this video came to about $1,432. So now that is a lot of upfront cost. But I mean, if you think about it, it looks amazing. I mean, I no longer have a router dangling on the floor. I don't have wires all over the place. And I mean, I now had 8 terabytes of redundant storage, which is something I didn't have on all my other hard drives sort of combined. So I'm really excited for it. I think it's going to unlock a lot of potential for future upgrades for my Homelab as well. All right, so there you have it. Another upgrade for my Homelab, and actually this is a much needed one. So I'm really excited for everything that this has unlocked. I'm also excited for the next upgrade that I already have planned. So if you all want to see that, you know, make sure you subscribe so you can see that. And then, hey, let me know in the comments down below what you'd like to see me add to my lab next, and let me know what you have in your lab. I mean, everything I've put into my lab has basically come from ideas and things that I've seen other people do, or what I've had sort of interest in from seeing other sort of posts. So always excited to see those sort of things. So make sure you do that. Also, you know, if you're interested in keyboards or coding or any of the other content that I put on this channel, you know, please make sure you subscribe. Would love to see you show up in more videos. So yeah, I appreciate you all taking the time to watch, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Remember, stay stupid.